Hey guys, well I got a little project here. I'm putting on free spinning wheel hubs on my Dodge Ram here. So I picked up this kit from Diesel Products. It's shipped out of Ohio. Took about 5 or 7 days to get here. So we're gonna see what this kit's all about and kind of work through some of the problems that I had, and which there weren't very many, only had a couple. The kit comes with most of everything that you need, with the exception of the front drive shaft U-joints. So if you need to pick up new ones, this is the time to do it. And you'll also need a special splined four-wheel drive axle nut socket. You can easily obtain it from any one of the corner auto parts stores, which I was quite surprised. One thing that's nice about putting on these locking or free spinning wheel hubs with the locking hubs is that, well, a couple things. One, it's less rotating parts, obviously, because you're not spinning the differential and the front drive shaft. And then, I guess, two, it lightens up the steering because you're not turning the mass rotation at all times, so that's kind of a added bonus. And then one of the things I like probably the most about these kits is that the bearings are serviceable, meaning that you can take them out, clean them, and inspect them, and then repack them with the fresh grease. And they're also spread out further, so they support the weight of the truck better due to the increased spacing. For you snowbelt guys, this hub area is kind of a point that gets rusted up and frozen in there pretty good, so you may need a tool to get this out. But here in Georgia, we don't have that problem. Well, I will also add that I had this hub out, I'm guessing probably 6 months ago. So when I reinstalled it, I put on anti-seize on the snap diameters. So as you see, it just came right off with no issues at all. And one thing I will say is that the problems that I had, oddly, were the cups being so frozen and tight inside of the yoke ears that it required me to use a hydraulic press. I know there's people on the various forums that have had success in pounding them out with a hammer. This would have not worked in my case. There you can see some of the parts I've changed recently just because I felt they needed it, not because they were worn out. Well, also because I'm chasing a popping noise, but a new track bar there, sway bar end links from Gino's Garage. Rebuilt the Fox 2.0 shocks. Here's the problem area that I came across, is trying to get these U-joints to free up out of their cups. I used a lot of PB Blaster. I don't have a lot of footage showing the struggles I had getting them out, but it required lots of heat and PB Blaster, and then eventually I was able to pop them out. And the problem was the force that was required to extract the cups out of the ears of the axles. The axle yokes were caused the ears to move inward 20 thousandths or so, and so I had to, in one case, take the U-joint back out and use a ball joint press to spread the ears back to allow the cup lock rings to be installed. So I got the U-joints changed. Everything worked, moved pretty quickly for me. This was done on a Sunday, so obviously there was no machine shops I could have taken them to, and I didn't expect to have that much trouble with the U-joints. I've changed many U-joints over the years, and these were some of the hardest ones I've had to run across. I apologize for the video. It's hard to determine if the sun's hitting the camera or the GoPro, and it did. It was certain parts of the video will blind you because the sun was just hitting the camera just right. The kit's real nice, though. I will say it's they thought of everything. They sealed the bearing on the adapter for the front axle. They seal the of course the inner bearing, outer bearing, all that. But they also seal the area for your ABS sensor, which is nice. So should keep a lot of the contaminants from the road from getting on the teeth for the counts. So that's nice. The kit also asks that you remove about 3/8 of an inch off of the securing hardware for the adapter. I guess they were worried about the bolts being too long and hitting the hub when you install it. In my case, with all 4 bolts properly torqued down, they were still recessed in about 35 thousandths, maybe even 60 thousandths. So I chose not to cut any material off. Anti-seize on the bolts, anti-seize on the diameter of the adapter for the hub. I even used a little bit of anti-seize on the wheel lugs. The documentation that's supplied with the Spyntec RAM kit is a little bit generic. Pictures are in black and white and kind of vague. So you gotta want to make sure you get the seals on correctly. But I'll be honest with you, most of it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, the instructions are only simply just use them with a grain of salt, and use common sense to figure out what they're trying to seal with them. I did use the instructions for the torque values though. You can buy all the seals and the bearings. Well, you can buy the seals, a whole kit to be able to service the bearings off of the various sites that sell Spyntec wheel hub kits. And I don't think they were that expensive. I think maybe $35 for every seal you would need to service the wheel bearings and replace the seals. And if you ever needed to replace the wheel bearings, these are the Timken units, and they look to be readily available from just about anywhere. I think I looked up the one from Napa, and they were $17. So I was surprised at, it's a pretty good price. This job took me pretty much all day Sunday. Like I said, it probably would have been done a lot quicker if I'd have had less troubles with the front U-joints, but I spent several hours trying to get those U-joints changed, get the clips in. I could get them changed, I just couldn't get the clips in, no matter what. So once I figured out that the ears had come too close, then pulling the U-joints back out and spreading the yokes, that resolved the issue. So you can use really any grease. I'm using the Lucas high speed marine flavored grease, and you can pack them by hand if need be. They're big enough that as long as you get the grease to travel through the rollers in your palm of your hand, you'll be fine. So if you don't have a bearing packer, it's not a big deal, but shoot, these bearing packers are everywhere these days. I can remember when they first came out with these things, they were hard to find, but I've had mine ever since, but I find them everywhere I go now, so shouldn't be any excuse not to buy one, and I would, because it does save a little bit of time. But if you don't have one, you can simply pack them. Grease everything, seals, splines, wheel races, or the bearing races, the wheel bearings, tried not to get any grease on the teeth for the ABS sensor, though. That's the one place I didn't do. I just put a light coat of penetrating oil on there is all I did, just to keep any rust that could develop on them. So the bearing hardware, securing hardware, is 3 pieces. There's an inner lock, or I'm sorry, an inner nut that you initially torque just to make sure that the bearing races are all the way down, and then you back it to 0, and then just simply tighten enough just to take out the play. And so essentially it's just finger tight, maybe just a little bit more than finger tight on that inner nut. And then the idea is to get that washer, that inner washer, to align with the pin of the lock. And then once you get all that resolved, and the bearing is tightened down correctly and not too tight, most importantly not too tight, the outer nut is torqued, I think, to 125 foot-pounds, maybe even 150. So that's the 3 pieces of the retaining feature for the 2 bearings. You have to use the socket that I mentioned earlier, and you can buy that at, well, I bought it at a corner auto parts store, I think for about $17. I opted for the default selected mile marker hubs, as opposed to spending $100 more for the Warrens. My buddy's got a F250, and he's got the Warren hubs on there, and we were kind of comparing them, and I don't do enough off-roading to justify the extra $100. I just simply wanted to put these kits on there to lighten the steering up and quit moving all these parts. One thing I forgot to mention is that on the cardan joint doesn't require lubing as frequent, since all this is not spinning at all times. I forgot to mention that earlier in the video. That's another value added bonus to putting on these free spinning wheel hubs, is that you're not spinning that front drive shaft and having to lube that cardan joint every oil change, as they recommend. You'll need a pair of snap ring pliers for the inner clip. And to play with the position of the hubs themselves for a little bit until I figured out, or got them to the point where they were locking and releasing correctly. You can tell when they lock, that's for sure. Due to the amount of grease I had all over the parts, I I had a lot of cleaning on the brake parts to do. No grease on the brake rotors, that's for sure, or the pads. Now you can see that the wheel hubs stick out farther, and so depending on your wheel installation, you'll have to kind of determine what you're going to do to allow for that locking wheel hub that's going to stick out 4 or 5 inches. The stock rims on this truck would not have worked. They are aluminum wheels on the truck. The hole would have been too small for the for any of the manufacturers to work. So fortunately, I had put on these XD Spy rims or wheels, and the center covers were easy to modify to get them to clear. They're just made of plastic. So I just drilled a couple of holes, used a little pin router I got from Home Depot on a high speed, and cut that plastic centerpiece out fairly easily, and then kind of smoothed everything out with a drum sander on a high speed. Just about done here. I don't really have any footage of me driving the vehicle. So once the wheel goes on, we're pretty much done here for the video. But I hope this helped y'all. Look at more resources that you can look at and kind of fill in the philosophy of a smooth job. I think it makes it easier for all of us if people contribute on YouTube and their struggles and whatnot. I like doing these videos to give back to YouTube, because many times it's not so much on working on vehicles or anything, but ideas on home improvement and whatnot. I use YouTube for that, recipes, and but for automotive, I pretty much can hold my own. I've worked on cars for many years, but it's always good to kind of see somebody else's perspective and kind of freshen up the idea in the mind of the task at hand. So I certainly hope this helps somebody else out. I would consider the free spinning wheel hub kind of a mandatory option on these trucks. I just think it's a great idea to not turn all those parts when you don't need them during the summer and whatnot.